Hi, my name is Mackenzie Ann Rice, and for today's speech, I will be discussing intercultural communication. Now for this, sources of intercultural communication published by William Starsorter states that one of the most prominent features of intercultural communication is face-to-face interaction between people of different nationalities. So in order for me to regulate myself with this topic, I decided to immerse myself in my friend Melissa's culture. She is of the Hispanic descent. We work in the same building, we like the same things, and so it was easy for us to become friends. But for this assignment, I decided to ask her if it would be okay for me to come into her house and ask her questions that might be more personal than we would talk about in a regular workplace setting, having small talks. So from this experience, I had learned that interacting with people from different cultures can be intimidating at times, but can greatly impact how we view other cultures and how they understand that we are more similar to us than we originally thought. So whenever we are beginning to immerse ourselves in this culture, we start to wonder, what's in it for me? What do I have to gain from this experience? Well, the answer is simple. We begin to learn and understand cultures different from our own, and that we begin to make connections that we are more similar than we have originally thought, and this eliminates biases, stereotypes. And so for this assignment, throughout the course of mine and Melissa's interactions, there are multiple similarities that I have made between both me, my family, and herself. So the three interactions I will be discussing is whenever I went over to her house and had a meal with her three kids, a birthday party she invited me to for her two children, and whenever we went to an apple orchard together with other friends of ours from work. So mine and Melissa's interactions are always fun. She always teaches me multiple things, and she has led me to further understand her culture. So the first interaction I'll be discussing is whenever I went to her house for a meal. She had cooked for me before. I was used to her cooking, but this particular day, Melissa decided to make something more time-consuming since I was going to be able to sit down at her house with her and her children. She made chicken tamales with rice and beans. This food was amazing. It was extremely spicy, but it was wonderful. While we were sitting down to eat, I noticed that her three children could easily eat this food without any hesitation. Even I, who was used to her cooking, hesitated a little bit because this food was so hot for me. But her three kids, ranging from ages 7 to 1, could eat this food with no hesitation. And so I asked her, I said, do your kids enjoy your cooking? And she said, oh my goodness, yes, they love it. They love sitting down for a large meal, although they do wish that sometimes I would cook like their American babysitter. So some nights we do have foods that I wouldn't normally cook, such as fried chicken and potatoes, and then other nights we have tamales and pozole. And so this led me to ask her a question: how was it for her growing up in America? And she stated that she loved growing up in America, and it was easy for her to remain true to her Hispanic heritage because she grew up in Texas, where there is a large Hispanic population, and that she was concerned that her children would not feel the same way because they live in Kentucky, where there's not such a high Hispanic population here. Not only have I learned about the cuisine that they served in Mexican culture, but also how they celebrated interactions. So this next interaction I will be discussing is whenever Melissa invited me to a birthday party for two of her three kids. The middle child was turning 5 and the youngest was turning 1. So there was a large amount of people at this birthday party. They served authentic Mexican cuisine, and I can't even begin to explain how much food was there. just a large buffet type of style. So I sat with one of my mutual American friends that we had from work, and she had brought her children there as well, and they were American. And it was funny, her children stated how hot the food was and that if they could go through a drive-thru after they left. And so while we were at this party, there was a piñata for the children, and inside there was candy, which was typical to the American children. But once the piñata broke open and the children ate the candy, they began to understand that this was not American candy. This was Hispanic candy. And then there was spice to this candy. It was hot to the children. Multiple children could not eat it. And for some reason, I thought this was funny, and it took me by surprise as well, because I would not expect there to be Mexican candy in a piñata as well. So while we were at this birthday party, some of the American families were ready to go home, and the Hispanic families had prepared for a day-long event. The party started about 2 p.m. in the afternoon and lasted until after midnight. The majority of the families had already left whenever I decided to leave, and I left at 10 p.m. And so I have witnessed my friends' family interact amongst themselves and other families, including those of their own culture, and I've also witnessed Melissa and her kids interact in public as well. So for this next interaction, all of us from work, we decided to go to an apple orchard. And while we were there, I noticed that Melissa's children did not hesitate in the slightest to interact with other children, to understand what it was to go on rides, to play, to hike, to zip line, go through the corn maze. I noticed that her children were just as fearless as all the other little boys I had ever been around, and that there is no difference between this whatsoever. And so, from this interaction, I had noticed from that American children and Mexican children are not that different, and that we are more alike than we would believe. So, in order for me to start this, I took resources from skillsyouneed.com, and this states that it is a desire for intercultural communication starts from the point of view that communication is better if it is constructive and does not suffer from misunderstandings. So from this experience, I have learned that we are more alike than we are different, and that we are more intertwined, and that I am able to fully understand my friend and that her culture and completely understand where she's coming from. And so lastly, I'll leave you with this statement from University of the People. Communication across cultures can be a challenge, but if we customize ourselves to better understand communication, we will better understand individuals, where they're coming from, and how we interact with one another. Such as this whole experience, I have learned that we are more alike, and I'm better accustomed to understanding Melissa, her heritage, and her family. Thank you for listening to my speech.